And I invited them here specifically today because Brittany asked me a question on parables. And I will say the question she asked, sorry guys, but it was, she thought, gosh, I don't know this, I might be stupid. And I said no, but I thought, gosh, everyone knows what parables are. And then last week when we were talking about them briefly, I really heard that no, everyone doesn't know what parables are. And even some of the people that, when I'm in here, I think actually teaching parables when they were talking last week, I really realized that they don't really know they didn't really understand either what parables are and how they're using them and stuff. And that really did surprise me. And I thought, wonder how I can teach that. And then I go read the lesson, and that's what this lesson is really about, is what parables are and why Jesus taught in parables. And it is interesting. And so I think I'm just going to start going through the verse instead of preamble, as I usually think of. That's what Cindy calls my leading into the class, is my preambling, is what it is. But anyway, I'm going to skip that because we're going to do it later. But that's what we're going to talk about is parables. And the unusual thing that we're going to do today is we're going to make our own parable, which will be like the parable of the seeds, except it's going to be what's going to be today. And so we're going to talk about, in today's world, what would be that parable. And that's what's going to make this lesson tough, I think, when we talk in a minute about what can we possibly talk about in today's world that is similar to what Jesus talked about in this world. And I think we're going to be surprised. Maybe not, but we'll see. So the first part, this is 13, 1 through 13, I think is what we're going to do. And this is our last, as I've been calling them, Jesus lessons. So thank goodness next month I will just have to try to teach what Paul taught instead of the complex stuff that Jesus taught. I can get simple and just try to go with what actually Acts isn't even Paul, is it? That's Luke, isn't that right? So yeah, Luke was the doctor, right? So that ought to be easy for you. Yeah. So anyway, so first is going to be 1 through 3a, and it's a crowd. And if you remember from last time, this is right after Jesus had the little argument with the Pharisees and scribes and stuff, and that occurred in the house. He got up and left, and this is what that day is. So on that day, Jesus went out of the house and was sitting by the sea. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat down, while the whole crowd stood on the shore. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, one thing I just thought here, and it talked about this giant crowd. How hard do you think it was to get a crowd in those days? And I'm going to say, just because we have a hard time thinking, but think this. So we went up to Pea Ridge one day, one of the Civil War battles, and they talk about the whole battle there. And well, this troop came around the trees, and we saw them, and we engaged, and then they went back behind the trees. And guess what? No idea where they were. Because they didn't have telephones, they didn't have radios, they didn't have helicopters, they didn't have cameras, they didn't have nothing. They went away. They're gone. And then they're sitting there wondering, when are they coming back and where are they going to come back from, because they've disappeared. Well, what about this? Well, there's a big part. You wouldn't believe what Jesus is doing in the house. How far could we spread that? As far as you could yell. That's it. And there wasn't some way to call the next village and say, you're not going to believe what this guy's talking about here, was there? So when you think about this giant crowd here, what had to have been happening in that part of the world?
Be talking about it.
A lot of word of mouth.
A lot of word of mouth and anticipating, don't you think? They had to get up and say, we're going to go down around, and I hope Jesus will be around there today, didn't they? And if you read, I know I've talked about that book to death, but I still say everyone should read it if they doesn't, the Kingdom and the Crown. But that's what it was talking about. They wake up and say, gosh, you think Jesus will be by the sea today? Well, he might be. Well, let's go down there and see. Well, it's a 10-mile walk to get down there. And then you start looking around for the crowds and saying, gosh, think he's here? I mean, and so when you look at these crowds and we think, oh, that's no big deal, but it had to be a big deal. I mean, you just didn't have it. It couldn't be by accident. And I think that's what Jesus said all the time. What I'm giving, what I'm spreading is not by accident. It's got to be purposeful. And it happened to be so. But he really had them talking about it. Some good, some bad, I would think. And then the second part is he told them many things in parables saying. So I just wanted to start. So what is a parable? And I'm going to say that the Greek that they do in here was to cast alongside. That's a parable. So what is a parable?
Like an analogy or an illustration to help explain something.
Okay. And if you're going to do that, then what are you using?
Examples.
What kind of examples? So let's talk. Huh?
Like something tangible.
What's pertinent to
Right.
them.
So I've said I teach in parables a lot in here. Wouldn't y'all say?
No, I can't tell a parable.
Yeah, Haley. You said it. What do I teach in?
Story?
Of what?
No.
You said it. You said it before. It's easy. A lot of y'all, my patients, what I teach about all the time. My work, don't I? Almost everyone's been to a doctor, hadn't they? So when I talk in doctoring stuff, that's familiar. Especially a lot of y'all have been to me doctoring. And so when I talk about my doctoring style, that's very familiar and it makes it easy. That's a parable. What else do I talk about?
You know everything?
Yeah, that's it. All right,
I can say that. So I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
So here's what I talk about. This is what I'm going to ask you about. I talk about my bird dog sometimes, don't I? Now, does anybody in here want to hear a story about a bird dog?
Not really, because we don't know anything about birds.
Not really, do you? But we managed to teach a little bit with bird dogs. Why? Now, let me ask you this, because this is something else that we'll say a parable is, and it's not, and it's more. Can a parable be a true story? Yes. Does it have to be a true story? No. Can I use a story to be both a parable or just a story? Okay, so, and this is how I'm going to explain that. So who likes hunting? Some of us. Who doesn't like hunting? Okay. So if I tell a hunting story and I'm just sitting here before class talking about hunting, who's going to tune it completely out? Most of you, a lot of you. If I tell a hunting story sitting up here, what are y'all going to do?
We'll pay attention.
You're going to try to figure out why in the world
Why
is
are you using
he
this story?
comparing that to that, right?
Right.
That is a parable, and that's what we're going to talk about. It's a parable of a story y'all are going to know some about, may or may not have any interest in it if it wasn't in the process of talking. But in the process of talking, teaching, you're going to start trying to figure out why that is. And so I thought about a parable to me that's just simple, and I was going to say, so if I start talking about calling turkeys and which call I want to use, who's going to listen? Chris back here. Not many of you though, are you? You really don't care. And I've got a mouth call and I've got a wing bone call and a box call and a slate call, and I really like to use. Y'all don't care, do you? Okay.
But if we know that
So if
know
I say,
everything.
okay, now when we have this church service and we're having a young person section and an old person section, And that's a lot like when I use my turkey calls and I use my bots call for this section. And it really gets the old wise toms, but when I use my mouth call, it's good getting the little younger ones. I really like to kill those younger ones because they're a little easier to kill. But when I want that big one, I've got, and if I want both, I might like the slate because it gets both. That's a parable, okay? That is what we're talking, that's what Jesus did. And so it's a story y'all don't care one bit about, a few of you. And if I was talking, if y'all came in, it's about turkey season. Me and Chris may, before we may sit here and talk about turkey calling. Y'all aren't going to listen to one thing. I'd say no one else in here is even going to want to listen to that, won't hear a word. Yet when I just start talking about turkey calling compared to the church services, y'all listened a little bit. That's what we're talking about, okay? So we're fixed to make a parable, and this one is that we're going to talk about. So it's got to be something pertinent to today that everyone's going to understand, that is going to be like the one Jesus is telling, okay? And that's where I'm afraid of. So questions, y'all understand how he used parables. What did Jesus use then? What did these people do?
Fished.
They fished and they farmed. That's mainly what he used, didn't it? Didn't use money much, did he? Much, a little bit, but why? Most of them didn't have money, did they? So, but that's what Jesus did. So he talked about the seed and so who really knows what the parable of the seeds was meant now? Who's ever broadcast a field? Who knows what broadcast a field is? So we don't know that much about it now, do we? So the parable of seeds, we have to even explain what it meant because we don't really know what they're talking about when they do. So we're going to talk about, and this is Jesus's parable, and this is 3 through 9. Consider the sower who went out to sow, and he was sowing, and as he was sowing, some seed fell along the path, and the birds came up and ate them up. Others fell on rocky ground where there wasn't much soil, and they sprang up quickly since the soil wasn't deep. But when the sun came up and they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered. Others fell among the thorns, and the thorns came up and choked them. Still others fell on good ground and produced a crop. Some 100, some 60, and some 30 times what was sown. Anyone who has ears should listen. So the first, just to say in this parable, consider the sower who went out to sow. Who is that sower?
Us.
Us,
The condition.
or Jesus here, whatever. Anyone teaching what? So what's the seed?
The gospel.
Huh?
The word.
The gospel. Okay. So if I was going to talk today and give a parable on the sower and the seed, who would be the sower? We are. What would I talk about that everyone would know, like the seed?
Money. I mean,
I think that's it. I think that is the only thing.
I'm smart.
Yeah. And isn't that a shame? I've tried to think, and we listen to Brother Rick's services right now, and we think, gosh, isn't that a little overboard? But that's what I'm going to ask again. Tell me anything else that every one of us is going to understand.
Besides that?
Tell us something else. Anything else that we all do that we all understand?
Work. I mean, not all this work, but eat.
Probably,
Yeah, eat.
one of
Cell
these
phones. Cell phones.
Cell phone?
That's a good idea. I don't know.
TV.
We eat. We wear clothes. Most of us drink coffee.
And all of it is about money. Every bit of that. That's what every bit of that's about money and what you do with your money, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we're going to talk, but that's what I think. So as we develop our parable, then the seed is going to be money. Okay. So as we develop the parable, now I do not have a parable developed, but as y'all know, if y'all want me to make one up, I can do it right now.
I know.
So, but I really want y'all to do that. But I don't have anything developed, and that's what I want us to do is talk about through money what is similar so that we can understand. I think it's very important. Any of y'all, and I talk about, we want to spread the word, don't we? We are the commission, as Randy said. We have to be able to teach, and as you teach, you have to be able to teach parables, and we all use them. Y'all are raising kids. Y'all aren't quite old enough. Y'all starting to use parables over there, Haley? Getting close. Gary?
No, we just use switches.
That works.
Good job.
They don't need a parable. They got the law on the rod.
Really though, don't y'all have, you have to
Yeah, all
use
the time.
parables, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, one of our most convenient questions is, what would you do in this circumstances? That kind of thing. If you were the parent and your child was behaving thus, what would you do?
And that's a parable. That is, compare what you would do to what I did. That is a parable. And so again, we all teach in parables every time. You teach in parables when you say, do you think you were right being out at midnight tonight? Because you're asking, then compare it to what you should be doing. And so we all teach in parables, and the more you can understand and learn. So why did Jesus teach in parables?
To make you think,
To make us
to
think.
make us learn.
And I'm going to go back. We're going to talk about it in a minute. But so we know. So why do we want to talk about something everyone understands?
It's easier.
So everyone has an opportunity to learn. Is everyone going to learn?
No, it just
No.
says it's dead. It's part of
So
it.
why not?
Because they're not listening. They're
Just like I was talking about earlier. You hear me talk about a turkey calling story, you're not going to listen, are you? Unless you think I'm actually talking
relates
about
to you.
Jesus. And if you think y'all are sitting here and you think I'm telling a turkey hunting story to talk about Jesus, every one of you is going to listen, aren't you? And you're going to be thinking and engaged and trying to figure out how in the world is he, I know y'all do that all the time because you do. How in the world is he going to tie that into our lesson today? But why do I do that? Because I want you thinking. I want your head churning, trying to say, how in the world is that going to apply to that? It is possible. He's telling us about fishing. I hate fishing. And here he is talking about fishing instead of whatever he's supposed to be talking about. But you're thinking, because rarely do I sit up here and just tell a story that's not got anything to do with the lesson. Do I? Hopefully not. Cindy says so. Anyway, she's not really sick. I told her she couldn't come today. Yeah, so.
I don't
All right.
want to
As-
I don't want that at all.
So as he was sowing, some seed fell on the path, the birds came and ate them up. So who is that?
Birds.
Yeah. So, well, both. Some seed, and now who's the seed?
The seed is the word.
The word. Okay. And then who's the crop that we're going to talk about? The lost. Okay. So as he was sowing, some seed fell along the path. What was the path? Well, so y'all know that the path is where they walked through the field and it was hard. So there wasn't dirt, it was just a hard path. That's the seed that fell on the path, okay? So what happened to that seed? The birds came and ate it up.
It was rejected. They didn't.
So who would be the birds?
Didn't do anything.
Who's the bird? Jesus explained this. So who is the bird? The wicked one, yeah. Satan. Satan is the bird. So today's, I want to use money to explain this.
The government.
We're first going to talk
Oh,
about,
sorry.
we're first going to talk about
The evil
the
ones.
use of money such that it has no return. The use of money such that it has no return. So someone tell me. I got paid and I went,
Gambled away.
there we have it.
Lottery ticket.
I
Dang it,
went
I'm
and
doing
bought
good
lottery
today.
tickets. I went and gambled it away. I went and what? No return.
Went to the liquor store and cashed my check.
So
My
that's
dad
what,
did that.
that's what this is.
Oh, I didn't do
Is,
that.
so someone just tell me this part then. Someone put me one in. Go ahead. So I got my money and
I went to the movies and wasted that entertainment for 2 hours.
and so I'm gonna ask, is that no return?
Yes, there is.
Well, I guess I
Well,
didn't
So
entertainment
that is
about
not no return. That is return.
Entertainment.
No return.
That's a break from reality.
Yeah, there you have it.
it. What do you say?
So what is no return?
Just wasting it.
Just absolutely
That's when I
wasting.
use it to start a fire.
Yeah, so I got paid and with my check, I don't know, and I just bought candy.
Bought some good tool and then your daughter goes and wastes it because she lost it.
Right.
And then, so that's just a waste.
So yeah, so we
So that
understand
happens all the time.
what that is here.
Right.
So we're gonna say, so we're making a parable of the money. So
Okay.
the worker got paid and went out and
Gambled it.
gambled it away. Okay.
It's easy.
And so, again, while we're talking and on this parable, what is this parable about? What is the parable of the seed? Is it about the worker?
So, heart of man.
It's about the heart of man. And it's about the seed, not the worker. It's about the receiver, right? It's about what happens with that seed. And so again, our parable of the money is the same thing. The money equals the seed. So, and where it lands is what? Where we spend it or invest it, however you want to say. That's what it is. And then
What we do
does-
with it. We'll
then
money
it
what we
can
do with it.
return something or nothing, right? All right, so then verse 5, others fell on rocky ground where there wasn't much soil and they sprang up quickly since the soil wasn't deep. But when the sun came up, they were scorched. Since they had no root, they withered. So who's this?
These are the people who win the lottery.
Okay, for money.
For
But
money.
first
I'm
is-
just saying, I'm
so
just thinking
for-
like they win them
for-
and they have
For
lots of money.
the interpretation of Jesus is who is this? These are people that I talk to, witness to, and what do?
They believe quickly, but they don't, they accept the Lord, but then they don't study and learn about him. So it's really, they don't really, I don't
So
say
they
accept the
take
Lord.
it and it sounds good and it sounds interesting,
Right, it's not deep.
and then the sun comes out, burns it up. So what is the sun?
Under control.
Huh?
Trials or tribulations.
Yeah, the
Oh,
world.
that's good.
Yeah, Jesus says. So where are we at?
So affliction and persecution arises because of the word, immediately he falls away.
Tribulation, persecution.
Right, and I'm gonna ask, how many of us have seen the sun? Yeah, a little bit, haven't we? But not that much, have we? You talk about, if you knew there might be people outside to arrest us when we left here, are we all gonna be here? That's the sun. I hate to tell y'all, but that's the sun. And right now, we think we got pretty Rich Roots, for goodness sakes, we're down here and digging deeper, learning all about the Bible, aren't we? Do we have deep enough roots that when there's real persecution that we can go do it? That we're still going to be here. We're still going to be learning. We're still going to be saying, yes, I'm a Christian and I'm going to grow. That's the question. So anyway, now let's talk about money. So we're making our own parables. I told you this is going to get tough. It's not going to get easy. You can't get out either, Gary. So.
I'm looking at that clock right now.
All right.
It'll be a test.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there somebody waiting for us?
So what is if we're going to use money? So what do we get on this? What do we get out of this?
Those that invest in the get rich quick
Yeah,
schemes, and it
that's
might
true.
actually return a profit at first,
It's quick,
but then all of a sudden,
Yeah.
the market turns or whatever you invested in doesn't work any longer. So now you shove that aside and you go look for something else because you're
Well, that's why I
you're
said
not
like the
interested
lottery.
in having to work too
Yeah.
In
hard.
5
The
years,
lottery,
people spend it
even-
and it's gone. They
That's
have
what they
nothing.
say.
Even the movie thing where we
Yeah,
talk
right.
about what do you really get out of that?
I would say this one is probably more like, if you look at the return as far as bearing fruit, this one would almost be like someone who would probably participate in a scheme where where their money, not only did it bear little fruit, but what they had was taken from them, and so they had nothing to invest with at the end.
That's good.
Well, it's like the professional athletes that make the big bucks, and 78% of them end up in poverty.
Now,
Same kind of deal.
the other thing on money, and just think of this parable, so we do. In this parable, understand there was a big sack of seeds. Some seed fell here, some seed fell here, some seed fell here, some seed fell here. Same with our money, isn't it? So what money is this? And that's probably the money I use for that nice new truck, or that boat, or that cabin. Is there anything wrong with knowing we're going to spend some money in those places where it's just going to burn up and not count?
I don't think you can say it's wrong.
The attitude of the heart, maybe.
Instant gratification, but didn't last long.
That's that money. So what's that? How's that compare to this story then? Is it wrong? Is it okay to spend that money then? When I tell the story here, and that's what I'm going to say for a parable, so y'all are a little confused now, right? Huh? Because we're thinking we're going to say it's not okay to ever spend money just for instant gratification. But that's not what this is saying. This isn't talking about me. This parable is not about the money spender. This parable is about the money. So when we start doing here, and that's what everyone's doing, wait a minute, are you talking about me? It's wrong for me to spend my money. And
Right.
this parable we're writing is not about the spender. It's not about the broadcaster. That's would be in Jesus' story. It'd be about the sower. It'd be about the broadcaster. It's not about that, is it? It's about the seed and what happened to that seed. My money, it's about the money and what happens to that money. And so what we want to do if we're teaching this is like the money you just went and blew. This is like the money you just went and blew. What's that going to do for you 20 years from now?
Nothing.
Nothing. Is that okay?
If it's not about you, it's about the money.
Yeah, but do we spend money that?
But you just said it wasn't about us.
So it's not. So again, is it okay for money to just be blown?
Well, and I think kind of to piggyback on that, is, you know, you look at, if you think about the broadcaster, the planter, you know, as being us as stewards of the word or, you know, gospel. I mean, he's not saying I'm not going to cast over there because it's stony ground. I'm not going to cast over there because it's a path. But he's broadcasting liberally regardless of the field, you know. And it maybe that's not really our job, is to say I don't think this person's ready.
That's good.
Our job is to broadcast.
Exactly.
That's great.
Yeah.
Great point.
Right.
That's what we have this problem about giving money to folks on the street corner.
Yeah.
So, once you get a job, and but we don't know if that's.
So is money gonna be spent that has no return? Sure. Sure. What if you are intent on never spending any money that has no return? What's gonna happen?
You can have a lot of money.
You're
You're not gonna spend any money, are you?
Yeah.
You'll have to pay the barn.
And so when we look at an investment strategy, can you say, I'm never gonna invest if there's any chance I might lose it? Now, that'd be silly, wouldn't it? You've got to take that risk, don't you? So you see how we're developing a parable.
And
So
you could even say who responded to the gospel the very first time they heard it. I know I didn't. You know, I probably heard it 4 or 5 times before I finally decided. You know, and so all that seed was cast.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that it didn't bear fruit. It's just the field needed a little more tilling. You know,
Wow.
You weren't soft at that point. You weren't.
I
You
was
were
still
hard
being
ground.
tenderized.
Yeah. You were heavy
Yeah.
or something. I don't know. You were hard, muddy rock.
But the sower didn't stop sowing the seed.
No, it didn't. No, it didn't.
So again, that's exactly what we're talking about. I'm gonna go ahead. What's happening here?
We're thinking.
We're thinking about something we know nothing about, really, aren't we? We're thinking about planting seeds with a broadcaster and landing on ground most of us really don't know much about all this, do we? But now we're starting to think, aren't we? We have ears. Now we have ears that we're trying to listen and say, gosh, what does this really mean? And we all know the money, don't we? But we're confused on exactly what's the same way. So we're constantly going back to saying, well, this is about me. This parable's about me. This parable's about me. But we're starting to realize, no, the parable is not about me. The money is not me. The money is the money. The seed is what it's about. So that's what we're talking about. So the next one then is this. Others fell among thorns, and the thorns came up and choked them. So in Jesus' story, who are those people? Steve, you're reading it. What did Jesus tell us those people were?
The one seed was sown among the thorns. This is the man who hears the word, and the worry of the world and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful.
So who's that?
That'd be like the Pharisees? Pharisees, maybe?
That's how they were.
Someone answer that. Yeah, that's probably right for them. What about now? Who are those people? What do you mean us?
Well, Christians.
Well, but the worry of the world, I mean, they don't have time to dig into the word or even go to church. They're working, they're trying to make more money so that they can survive in this world or get more or buy more or whatever. And so the world and the advertising of the world that says you got to have more stuff makes you focus on that rather than coming to church and focusing on what God wants you to hear.
So let's go to our parable then and try to learn. So money. So what money is this? I'm gonna spend money. Is this probably money I spent or money I invested?
So I'm trying to think of an equivalent to perhaps this is an individual to take it back to the seeds. I'm trying to go the other way. Is it's not that it was bad soil. It was that it was already overgrown. He had too much there already. You know, so there was no need for the seed to be cast necessarily. It was already
Well, it
overwhelmed.
says he hears
so if you,
it,
so if you
so he
apply the
did hear
financial,
it, so
yeah,
it did come up.
he heard it, but there was
just
no
got
room. He
choked
had too
out.
much other distractions.
Right.
So in the money sense, I don't know how you would.
So what money is that?
Trump. He's got too much money. They can hear it. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say
So
that.
so he's maybe money we've invested in a big giant portfolio,
That's all gonna end.
and one part of it is good, but the rest of it is not. And we start taking money out of the good one and put it in
Is
the,
that like Social Security? We pull the money out.
Diversity.
Diversity.
it's diversity, isn't it?
Diversity.
And what's diversity supposed to be then?
That covers your losses. It makes it, if this is doing well and that's doing bad, then they offset each other. And so maybe you want to put a little bit more over in this area to offset. Basically, you're planning on failure. So
And so,
you want to make sure you're covered
so in
even if it
the,
fails.
so in the money part, then what is that, Gary? You're saying it over there.
I'm saying the gospel is like a government bond, so it's kind of like it's secure.
That's right. And what's the high risk?
But they're more into the high risk, quick yield, kind of the immediacy, perhaps. And this is not
And
an
it would
immediate
be
investment.
exactly that. Your money man calls up and says, I've got this thing that's got a 20% return. Hey man, sell all my bonds today. Let's put it in that. And what's gonna happen by the odds?
They're gonna recall it way before it ever gets to the 20%. It's gonna, or else it just defaults
So,
at
so
the get-go and you've
so-
lost it all.
you lose it all because you didn't put it in, you planted it where it's overplanted. That's what you said, right?
Yeah.
So exactly that. Was that a good investment?
Mm.
And think again, was that a good investment? The first part. Did those seeds grow?
There's good intention, but
Did those seeds grow to start? Yes, they
They
did.
did at the start.
So was the soil good? Soil was good, wasn't it?
it's what deep.
So it was a good investment. It's just that you didn't take care of that investment. You didn't make sure that you didn't invest too much. You put all your chickens in that basket. Another analogy to explain an analogy,
Right.
which is what you do. But that's what it did, isn't it? So it's people that heard the word. Now, this is where I have a hard time. Did they accept Christ? Do they accept Christ, these people?
That's a good question. I was kind of wondering that too. And I would look at it as no, they receive the words, but I think the fruit is your salvation. You know, that essentially what you're talking about here is you're talking about the seed of the word that is growing, but ultimately the product would be the fruit of salvation. You know what I mean? That they would receive the word and bear fruit, and that fruit would be.
And that's what I asked then. So in this situation, what fruit is produced? None.
Well, it
You
says
know-
it becomes unfruitful. That doesn't mean it was unfruitful to start with. It could have been fruitful for a little bit and then you
Multiply.
mishandled it or mismanaged it and it
and
became unfruitful.
And that almost comes back to, Paul verse James, I guess. Faith without works is dead. Works by itself is dead. And I don't know the answer to it. I really don't. I mean, so that really would be a question if they heard and tried but produced no fruit. Did they ever really hear? Or is that one that Jesus is going to say, I don't know you?
Well,
And,
did
and I
the
don't
thief
know
on the
that
cross
answer.
produce any fruit?
But again, if the
He got
fruit,
his name in the book.
yeah, but the
so-
fruit, if the fruit itself is that, that knowledge.
And that's what I'm going to tell you then. Yes, he did, but just right now.
Yeah, because he learned from it. He learned from that.
Just right now, yes, that thief produced fruit. So
Right, by learning.
so I don't know. these are possibly, and I have a hard time.
That's
So,
the mystery.
so these are possibly the ones that Jesus will say, I never knew you. These are possibly ones that did receive the Holy Spirit, and it will just be, you will be judged as saying you had no fruit. I don't,
You know, in this, this is kind of far-fetched, but in a sense is when you think about, you know, we're supposed to sow or who throws out all the seed, you know, I guess they may could be throwing the seed only on the path that's hard. I mean, like for instance, if I go to all these homeless people and just tell them about the word and tell them about Jesus, and because you look like you're in such need, but don't go tell the rich person who has all the money, you know, but doesn't even understand about salvation. You see what I'm saying? We have to make sure that we spread it all
yeah,
over.
and I
So-
think that's,
Does that make, I
it
don't know
does.
if I
And
can
if
draw a
you're-
conclusion.
If you go back to Jesus' saying for anyone that's ever planted seeds with the broadcaster, how close can you get it to where you want it to be? Yeah, you can get it
You
within.
can, I mean, we have an attachment that hooks to the tractor and you can fill it up with seed and then you can regulate how much seed you want to put out. And so the more seed you put out, the less area that you're gonna broadcast to, but you got a better chance of it coming up. Or you can set it thin and it'll broadcast a lot wider, but you're gonna miss some spots. And so you can get it as close as you want
You
to.
see what I'm
But
saying?
you
I don't know if
can't-
it's the-
You don't, I mean, if I'm driving the tractor and the cows have come across and
Right.
made paths through there, well, it's not gonna grow on there, but
Right.
I'm not gonna try to weave around all that stuff. I just go straight up and down
Right.
and broadcast it all. And so it's not our intent, I think, we don't need to worry about where it's gonna go as long as we're putting it out
Doing
there.
there.
So,
That's good.
so we're gonna keep moving because Gary's hoping time will run out.
We're going up good.
Still others fell on
I'm
good
still gonna
ground.
get there, I just don't go.
Still others fell on good ground and produced a crop. Some 100, some 60, and some 30 times what was sown. So who is this? And it is one who hears and understands the word. That's what Jesus said. What is the crop? In this, what's the crop?
The gospel.
Huh? Fruit. So for us, the fruit. So in our parable for today, what is this? We may not know this because I don't know that there are any investments that produce fruit anymore, but
Well, it can be like a pension. Doesn't a pension, as long as you're living, you
there's
get
someone
money?
here who has had a good investment that's made them quite a bit of money.
Oh.
I bet y'all have. I bet y'all invest somewhere.
I know, I just think of Amy's
IRA.
pension. I mean,
Yeah.
he's vested now,
Your
so that
IRA.
means that he will
Comes
get
up.
money
So you're
every
putting
month.
money
Right.
in.
Unless the company that
Yeah,
decides not
defaults.
to give it anymore and defaults on it,
Right.
and then you don't have it.
Well, that's, if you could set that,
But it
that'd be
was,
God.
at the time,
Same
back in the 50s and 60s, when the pensions came out and they started that, it was a good,
I
it was a
think-
good idea.
Don't
Gary
be making me
was-
nervous now.
I think Gary would say then, government bonds. Really, I mean, you know, whatever that you invest in, you're gonna get a return and it's almost
Exactly what you put
impossible. Huh?
That'll be exactly what you put into it too.
Yeah, there you go.
That's, because we just,
We bought some bonds for our son in 1989, right? He cashed them in a few weeks ago. He has to pay taxes on the profit of those bonds. Well, how many times do you tax the same money?
That's
when
what
they
they
I
got,
can
you
believe
made
it.
all that
Yeah.
bonds on the bonds.
So
More
then
bonds.
Jesus says,
Oh,
so,
yeah. you're-
so then
Only
Jesus,
85% of it.
I don't think
Oh,
they have to pay
dear.
on unless it's above a certain figure. No, my tax man said for me not to worry about it.
so then Jesus
I don't
says,
even
who
fill out
has
a form
ears?
Anymore.
Jesus says, anyone who has ears should listen. Who has ears?
We hope everybody,
Yeah, everyone has ears.
right.
So everyone should listen. Do they? No. And that's what we're gonna kind of talk about now this need to be a whole nother lesson, but
You want to hear that?
C is a reason. And so this is 10 through 12. Then the disciples came up and asked him, "Why do you speak to them in parables?" He answered them, "Because the secrets of the kingdom of heaven have been given for you to know, but it has not been given to them.
He did give it.
For whoever has more will be given to him, and he will have more than enough. But whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. For this reason I speak to them in parables, because looking they do not see, and hearing they do not listen or understand." So Jesus never wanted these people to get the word, right? That's
No.
what it says.
No.
Wanted
Huh?
They had the opportunity.
Then how's that work?
If they didn't,
So this is what I wrote that I think is the way it works. Tell a story that all know, and those with open minds will use that to learn about what you're teaching. Others will just think, "I already know that." To learn from it requires an open mind, desiring to learn. Okay, so when I tell a story up here, I'll just say about my bird dog. What if you're not wanting to learn? What do you got here?
Wah, wah, wah.
That's it, aren't you? You're gonna hear a story about a bird dog, and you've never had a bird dog, and you got no interest in a bird dog. And the second I start talking, you're not hearing, are you?
Right.
What if you have ears to hear? What are you doing? And we just showed that in here. What do you gotta do?
Turn it out.
listen,
You're gonna tune it out if you don't have it. If you wanna hear, what are you gonna do?
listen.
And you're gonna try to figure out how in the world, what's he talking about? What is that? How's it gonna work, right? So did he determine who was going to hear and who not?
Yeah, people were staying, listening.
Yeah, but did Jesus determine that? Did Jesus cast his seed? Where did Jesus cast his seed? Let's go back. Who was the sower in this? I'm going to say it was Jesus. Where Jesus cast his seed? Everywhere. So did Jesus try to save money on seeds, Steve? We didn't talk about. So when you set your thing real narrow, why do you do that?
Get a better return.
Because I don't have to go buy more seed.
Because you're a cheapskate and you want every seed to count, right? Really? That's why so did Jesus do that? Okay, so let's talk about us. When we're witnessing, who do we need to witness to?
Everyone,
Everyone.
not just the poor
And
people.
what happens if you witness to everyone?
Some people don't want to hear it.
And that kind of hurts. You waste seed, don't you?
Yeah.
And it's no fun to waste seed. I'm going to go back to my doctoring. Haley's in there. I talked to some people that I am completely wasting seed on, don't I, Haley?
Yes.
You think I know that when I'm doing it?
Yes.
Sure I do.
It's not me.
Sure I do. But if you don't do that, they don't have any chance. And I'm going to say, just since I can make, did you kind of get your feelings hurt recently because you did not spread some seed where you think you should?
Yes.
Have we all done that, every one of us? Where you go back and you look, I wonder if I had planted there, what would have happened?
Hindsight's 2020.
Yeah. Why? Because, but we all do that. Every one of us does. Jesus did not. Jesus planted it everywhere, but understood those who want to listen, the good soil is going to hear. And that's all I can do. And those who want to listen will learn. Those who don't. And so then he says, for this reason I speak to them in parables, because looking they do not see, and learning they do not listen or understand. So was that Jesus's words, Steve?
Yes.
That was a quote from Isaiah.
Well, it's in red in my
Yeah,
Bible.
well, he
said-
quoted from
Right,
Isaiah.
he does quote
Uh,
Isaiah.
Could we say that today? Would that same quote apply right now?
Sure does.
Why?
But nothing else has ever changed. You still have the hard pass and the thorns and all that. People haven't changed either.
Nothing's changed. The more it changes, the more it stays the same. So I'll just go back to that same thing. Y'all want to hear a bird dog story? Anyone want to hear a bird dog story?
Sure, listen.
Yeah, now we do.
Okay, here you're gonna listen. Let's step out those doors and I'm gonna tell you about my best bird dog who's gonna stay. Bad mind. Not many of you are though, are you? Because you don't want to. So what is the problem when we tell stories? When we try to witness, that's the story we're talking about. What's the problem?
We need to make sure it relates to them.
That's one. And then what?
Not everyone's gonna listen.
Understand, not, people don't want to listen.
Yeah.
And I go back. Out there, I'm going to tell a bird dog story. You don't want to hear it. Are you going to hear it? In here, you want to listen. Out there, when we're witnessing, we're out there. We're telling a story, and the only people who are going to hear it are the ones that want to hear it.
I see that every day.
So,
The students. Students don't want to listen, they don't learn.
so we're supposed to be on that corner, holding that sign up and spreading it to everybody, right?
No, that's you.
That's right.
No, you're supposed to act
We're
right.
waiting for you.
Oh,
So
so we can't.
Supposed to act right.
So y'all
Okay.
understand a little more about parables and why they make people think
That's good.
and what they do. That's what we want to, and we have to use parables. And you do use parables. Not one of us does not use parables. You just don't understand that's what it is. Now, developing them deeper, that is a talent, I guess I'd say. I mean, being able to take and actually teach with the parable, that's for us teachers. I mean, not everyone
It's a
can do
great
that.
exercise.
Yeah, I mean, not everyone does. You do it, don't you, Randy? You do it every day when you teach, don't you? I do it every day in the office. Dad, you've done it forever. When you're trying to teach people, you have to do that.
But sometimes you have to recognize the glazed over eyes and take another direction.
So
that's, you get another parable.
But I think that's part of our learning process as Christians who are disciples, to not get discouraged, because I've been discouraged many times myself.